Good morning. This last week, I spent several days in New York City at the Art and Business Conference, and today we're going to be talking about what that conference was, what I got out of it, what I think it is good and bad points about it, and if it's worth traveling to in the future in New York, Shanghai, London, or other cities. Thank you for watching today on Behind the Gavel with Jason. My name is Jason Roski. I'm the owner of the KC Auction and Appraisal Company here in Kansas City. I'm just going to share this on my page real quick. And I had a really fun time in New York City. I love going to New York, and obviously, I love artwork. I love antiques. I love everything about this industry. So it was a really great time uh, to be able to explore New York for a day or two, and to just getting immersed in art. And so I was able to do a lot of things. I read quite a little bit about the art market today. I delved further into the Hiscox report, which I was talking about last week. On Monday, I got into town because of flight schedules. I got into New York City around lunchtime, so I had pretty much the entire afternoon and evening to spend in New York City, which is a lot of fun. I went to Lillian Nassau, saw some phenomenal Tiffany art glass lamps, went to the Maclo Gallery, went to Bauman Rare Books, a gallery that specializes in ancient Greek and Roman artifacts, went to the Manhattan Art Antique Design Center, had a great time on Monday. I probably walked 8 miles, which was a lot of fun. And then Tuesday was, again, the Art Business Conference in New York. The Art newspaper has put these on around the world. This was the 3rd edition in New York City. They've done them in Shanghai and in London as well. Good morning, Mercedes. Thanks for watching. Happy to see you again. And so I've been wanting to go to this for quite some time, but based on schedules and just the way the business was and things like that, I just couldn't. This year I carved out time this week to go because I was just really curious to see the event, see what they offer, and to be able to bring some ideas back to our business to bring to you. So I was really happy to do that. You can see they put together a nice little brochure for the program that talked about all the sponsors and ideas for the business. Of course, our advertisers got nice big full-page spreads in here. And so the event started Tuesday morning. Of course, there's 2 reasons to go to a conference like this. One of them is to learn from the speakers and presenters. What are they going to offer you? What are they going to bring to the conference as far as their seminars and panel discussions? What kind of nuggets can you learn? And then, of course, networking with those other people in attendance. I think they said there was 300 people in attendance, which seems about right based upon the size of the room and the amount of seats that were full. And there was people from all kinds. I think they said 140 different arts organizations around the world, whether that's auction houses like us, appraisal firms, logistics companies, companies that work on traveling art museum exhibitions. Museums were there, all kinds of everything that you can imagine in relation to the art world. Somebody was probably there either as an attendee or as an exhibitor. So there was a lot of great information, a lot of great people. Sorry about that. When the morning started off, Devang Thankar, I believe that's his right name, was the conference chair. Yeah, Devang Thankar, who is the vice president for consumer marketplace at Artsy. Of course, Artsy is a huge website, tons of traffic, tons of art sold through there. And so he was the co-chair. He was the kind of not the moderator during the day, although he did moderate a couple of panels. He was more along the lines of the voice of the conference. When they were switching panels, bringing up new speakers, he's the person who introduced the next speaker. Day started off with a bang. There was a 3-person panel. Julie Wexler of Christie's, Thomas Galbraith of Leslie Hindman, and Joshua Greenberg from Bank of America Private Bank was on the panel. They were talking about kind of the future of the market, but and they talked a little bit about that, but the Amy Wexler from Christie's, one of the presidents of Christie's, stole the show. She talked about the Rockefeller exhibition, an auction that they did this last year. In case you all remember, the Rockefeller estate sold the major collections that the parents had put together over decades and decades and decades. And Christie's had a phenomenal opportunity. They had 10 months to work on this collection. And there was tons of excitement in the marketplace for it, spectacular works. But because they were afforded so much time and they knew the revenue would be so large and all the proceeds were going to charity, they were able to do some things that normally we can't do in the auction business. Even Christie's can't do it. She said usually have 10 weeks to 3 months from the time they start working on a estate to the time it's sold, which is kind of where we're at too. That's kind of, if you call this today, probably 8 to 10 weeks out before we can actually get your items sold and processed. And so they were able to put together these exhibitions of the Rockefeller collection around the world, and it really drove interest, and it was spectacular. They put together a really nice video. I'm sure it's on their website. They showed it at the conference, kind of highlighting the highlights of the auction and of the process of it traveling around the world, the different people attending. It was really interesting. She could have had an entire hour to herself just talking about that portion of the just that one little nugget of what they did. It'd have been kind of interesting to see how they decided to go where, how they decided to bring what items to where, because they had 10 days of auctions. It was a much larger event than the highlights that you've heard about or read about. So that was fascinating. Thomas Galbraith was also on that panel from Leslie Hyman. He talked about their plans and how they're kind of addressing the future of the market as they see it. And although they're doing a lot of online auctions, they're doing some things a little bit differently than others right now. They're kind of trying to grow through actual brick and mortar as well. So they're doing more of their sales online. He was saying that their live auction events are much smaller, addressing the needs and wants of the current buyer, in that time is more important than the asset. But they're actually expanding their offices. They have 10 offices across the country right now, which I thought was really interesting. And he said they're looking to expand even further. So I thought that was very fascinating. And of course, and Joshua Greenberg talked about the future of collections itself. If you're, in an estate situation, how can you? They address along with their clients the best ways to transfer assets from one generation to the next. And so that was interesting as well. One of the fascinating questions somebody asked the panel, and it was directed more towards Amy and Thomas, was if you had $1 million to spend on marketing right now, what would you spend that on? And Amy, without hesitation, said she'd spend it all on social media and online marketing tools and resources. And there wasn't even a hesitation. There was no idea of spending money on print advertising, direct mail, any of that. She said it was all social media and online marketing, which I thought was very interesting, that this centuries-old, staid and true auction company is really focusing on and gearing their future towards the online platforms and marketplace. I thought that was really interesting. Thomas had a different answer. He said he'd take half of it, spend towards online, but he'd take the other half and spend towards office development, because they think that being in the cities they want to serve is as important, have physical bodies there and locations, as the online influence. And I can see both points easily. We get a lot of business because people know where we're at. And so I thought that was very interesting as well. One of the other speaker highlights for me during the day was Edward Dolman. He's the CEO of Phillips. Excuse me. Another obviously big-time auction company, big-time auction house. And he has been in the auction industry and the estate art industry for about 40 or 50 years. And he has some great stories and anecdotes about his time in the industry and his time at Phillips. One of the things that he said that really stood out to me was, now we're selling contemporary art at auction is really kind of expected at the big auction houses, selling Banksy's work and de Kooning, of course, but Jeff Koons and other contemporary artists who are making work today, selling their work at auction was not always the norm. And as recent as about 20 or 25 years ago, Christie's, when they agreed to the first auction of living and contemporary art, said, told Ed, you can do that auction, but you have to put it in another location. We do not want to sully the collections that we're selling and upset our buyers. So in just a 20-year period, it's gone from being, well, we'll let this guy play with his idea, to what's become really a mainstay and an important driving factor for the auction industry in the big houses. And something we're looking at doing is more contemporary and living art auctions once we get a bigger location to be able to sponsor and do some of those things. So that was all very interesting. Those are the three most impressive collectors that are speakers for me because of what I obviously in the auction industry. That was, they speak to what we do a lot. The other thing we talked about in the conference overall was collectors are borrowing money against their art, and the kind of parameters around that. You can borrow up to 50% of the value of the art. So that was interesting to hear that from people in that world. Other big issue is clean and clear title on artwork in antiquities, especially with the continued looting and pillaging of UNESCO historic sites in the Middle East, and historically that kind of activity going on. Museums museums around the world have built their collections on looted and pillaged objects, and there are more and more times and more organizations working to get those pieces restituted and given back to the correct authorities. Africa is doing a big push right now to get a lot of their goods, their history, their artistic history back in country, and they're building some museums to start to house those things there in Africa. So what did I think about the conference overall? I thought overall it was pretty good. One of the other things I'm going to mention real quick is they talked about due diligence. Of course, that just factors what I was talking about. And they talked about the changing mentality of collectors, and I thought this was interesting. Several people said something similar to this during the day, that historically collectors have bought with an eye to the past, the grandiosity, the gravitas of a collection, the importance of it historically in an historic context, the items in a historical context. That has kind of been up until 10, 15, 20 years ago. That is what collectors were focused on, is their place in history because of their collection and the place in the history of the items that they collected. Collectors today aren't necessarily, there's still some of that, but they said people are collecting with a much more of an eye on the future and in the current. And that's why you're seeing more contemporary art sales, and contemporary art is being sold at auction, and those prices continue to go up because people are buying today's works more aggressively. This has happened before. It'll happen again. I think there's going to be ebbs and flows in the marketplace, as there always are. What's popular today won't be popular tomorrow. But I just thought it was an interesting thing. They also equaled it to collectors today are more like big game hunters. They're hunting those prized objects, those prized paintings, those big time ticket items, as opposed to quantity. And we have definitely seen that. People, by and large, rather buy really good pieces and have a few nice things than lots of average. So like I said, on the conference overall, I thought it was pretty good. I thought there was some really good information there. I was a little disappointed at the quality of some of the speakers, not that their content wasn't good, just there are some speakers who appeared like they'd never spoken at a conference before. And one woman in particular had actually knew her stuff, but she giggled because she was nervous. I'm assuming that's why it was. And so it lessened the impact and importance of what she was saying. There was a lot of ums and ahs. There was a lot of people, they had issues with PA during the day, which is partly the speaker's fault, but also partly the conference fault. And so there was a lot of things that they could do in that regards to make the conference better, vet their speakers a little bit better. And then I thought the networking opportunities were there, but they weren't organized at all. They were like, here's some food, here's a room, knock yourselves out. There were some things they could have done, just slight modifications to the day would have made it more interesting and more accessible to networking amongst those who were there. I did meet some great people. I did meet some people who I think I'll do business with in the future, and those are all good things, but they could have done things. The name tags are very simple, generic, black ink, black ink on a white sheet of paper. There was nothing, and then our name and our company. So, they say in the brochure, there's people from Australia and the Middle East and the Far East and several countries, and I don't know how many states, but they didn't have any of that information on the name tags, which would have been a great lead into a conversation with somebody. They also didn't have the industry specific that the person was in. So if you're John Jones Art Advisor or John Jones, you didn't know exactly what they did, and they could have done a couple of things with the name badges to make that more distinct. First-time attendees could have had a different color or notation on their name badges. And then speakers were just kind of left to, if big room, you can kind of see what the people look like, but they're, it'd have been great to have them singled out or distinguished on their name badges as a speaker at the conference, or presenter, or a vendor. So some things that they could do to make the conference more engaging for the patrons. Obviously, it was in New York. New York is one of the art centers of the world. So a lot of the people there walked to the event and or took the subway or a cab from their homes. So a lot of the people there knew each other. So it was easy for them to fall into those conversations that they've had with people over decades. And so, as a true outsider, never been to that conference, never really spent much time in that art world in New York, I did feel like an outsider, and it'd have been nice to have some ways to integrate with some of the locals, especially those at a higher level in the industry that I am. But overall, it was good. Would I do it again? Maybe, maybe not. It's not a must-do for me at this point, although I do love spending time in New York City. To kind of talk about that, on Monday, I also went to Museum of Modern Art, and I bought these really swank little glasses, which are pretty cool. And they're really fun because they actually fold up flat, which is really unusual. And so I'll, you can see they're super wafer thin because the arms fold up and around. So that was fun. And like I said, I love spending time in New York. If I do it again, I'd probably make sure I had other things on the people to see while I was there to make it a productive trip that way. And I did that this time as well. So that worked out great. There's some interesting things in the pipeline for the company in the next several months because of that. But yeah, as far as the conference itself, might go again. I don't know if I'd go out there specifically for it. I think there's a few minor tweaks they could do to make the event much better for those attending. But overall, it was a good event, and if it doesn't cost you too much time, money, or effort, it's very worth going if you're in that Northeast corridor or you're near London or Shanghai. I think for a day and a few $100s, it's great. Obviously, for me, it was 3 days and more than that because of airfare and hotels. Other than that, it's we have some great things happening at the KC Auction Company. We have a phenomenal auction online right now. Burgess Hansaner oil paintings, Lester Raymer oil paintings, Edie Fern Connect oil paintings. Great collection of jewelry, great collections of sterling silver, and much more. Tomorrow, we will be doing the KCPT Antique and Fine Art Appraisal event. Obviously, we've talked about that before. We're proud to be involved with that organization and that event again for the 5th time as a sponsor, the 3rd time as a sponsor, 3rd or 4th time as a sponsor of the event, and excited about that, seeing what great objects Kansas Cityans bring into that event tomorrow, and more things on the horizon. So again, thank you all for watching. If you have any questions, please post them here. Send us a direct message. You can always give us a phone call at 816-283-3633. Drop us an email at info@kcauctioncompany.com. Info, I-N-F-O, at letter K, letter C, auction company, spelled out.com. Or you can send us a direct message here at any time as well. If you're on YouTube, you can post comments there. Thanks again so much for watching. We'll see you next week, and have a great weekend.